stood in front of the mirror on a Tuesday in July. A face I'd seen 1,000 times, a stranger in the eye. The cheekbones were the same, the jawline hadn't moved, but something in the looking was a person I disproved. She wore my clothes, she stood in my apartment, she used my voice, but she was nothing like the person I had been before. The choice to let you go, the choice to watch you leave, had left a person in the glass who didn't quite believe. I stared at her for months and months, a scientist at work, cataloging all the things that made her go berserk. The way she tilted her head, the way she held her cup, the way she said your name and then she'd have to stop. The year I didn't recognize myself was the year I learned that loving you had built a version I had to unburn. I watched her like a stranger in the glass across the room, and waited for the day she stopped the disappearing bloom. She wasn't me, she wasn't you, she was the space between, a monument to loving someone I could no longer dream. And I watched her fade, I watched her go, I watched her disappear, until the face in the mirror was the one I held right here. I tried to talk to her at first, I tried to reason out, you're not the person that you were, I said with a shout. But she would just look back at me with eyes I didn't know, a quiet little passenger that wouldn't let me go. She'd order food I didn't like, she'd wear the clothes you chose, she'd laugh at jokes I didn't get, and then she'd gently close her eyes at night before I could. She'd drift away from me, a person I was living in but couldn't make them see. I kept a diary of all the things that she would do, a field guide to a stranger that I had become too. I wrote down everything she said, I cataloged her face, and waited for the moment I would find my rightful place. The year I didn't recognize myself was the year I learned that loving you had built a version I had to unburn. I watched her like a stranger in the glass across the room, and waited for the day she'd stop the disappearing bloom. She wasn't me, she wasn't you, she was the space between, a monument to loving someone I could no longer dream. And I watched her fade, I watched her go, I watched her disappear, until the face in the mirror was the one I held. I took a photo of the glass on the first of every month, to document the slow release, the gradual unclench. The face would change a little bit, the eyes would get more clear, the stranger would begin to look like someone I could near. It took a year of watching, a year of letting go, a year of waking up to someone I could barely know. And then one day she looked at me and I looked back and saw the person I've been waiting for behind the closing door. I don't remember the exact day the switch was done, but I remember standing there without a place to run, and seeing my own eyes for the first time in so long, that I could feel the person I had been before. The song of loving you, the song of losing track of who I was and who I'd be, and how I'd find my way back. She wasn't there anymore, that stranger in the glass, she'd finally dissolved into the person I could pass. What is identity but a habit we wear, a code of what we used to love, a tie to what we swear. I wore the coat of loving you for longer than I should, and then I took it off and stood in something that was good, not because I found a new love or a better plan, but because I found the person underneath the fan, the one who'd been there all along, the one who'd been the base, the face behind the stranger's face, the one I now embrace. The year I didn't recognize myself was the year I learned, ooh, that loving you had built a version I had to unburn. Ooh, I watched her like a stranger in the glass across the room, and waited for the day she'd stop the disappearing bloom. She wasn't me, She wasn't you, she was the space between. A monument to loving someone I could no longer dream. And I watched her fade, I watched her go, I watched her disappear, until the face in the mirror was the one I held right here. I stand before the mirror now. The face is mine to know. The stranger's gone, the year is done, the person's here to grow. I smile and she smiles back at me, a person I can trust. The mirror is a friend again, the glass has found its just. Mirror, face me, stay. The lamp on the nightstand is the one you picked at the fair, the one with the crooked shade and the base that's slightly bare. I kept it after you had left, I kept it in my room, a talisman of a time I thought I'd never be immune. The plant in the corner has a name I can't recall. You brought it home from the market on a fall afternoon. I never asked you what it was, I never had the gall. I just watered it and watched it grow inside the living room. I looked at them for years and thought they belonged to we, a collection of the things that made a family. But standing in the quiet of a house without your face, I realized the objects had a different kind of space. The things I kept that weren't yours, they never were yours at all. They were mine before you walked in, mine before the fall. The lamp, the plant, the chipped cup on the shelf, they were mine, they've always been myself. I kept them like a museum of a love that used to be. But walking through the rooms I finally see the objects don't remember you, they only know my hand. And the things I thought were ours are just the things I understand. The painting on the wall is one I bought the year before, the year I met you in the rain, the year we opened doors. You said you liked the colors and the way the light would fall, but it was always mine, it never had to be yours at all. The books on the shelf were novels that I read at night, the ones you borrowed once or twice and never gave to light. But I kept them in the order of the way I wanna read, not the way you stacked them, not the way you'd feed. I used to think the house was ours, a joint identity, but gradually I noticed all the things that belonged to me. The toothbrush in the holder, the sheets upon the bed, the pillows that I fluffed at night to lay my head. The things I kept that weren't yours, they never were yours at all. They were mine before you walked in, mine before the fall. The lamp, the plant, the chipped cup on the shelf, they were mine, they've always been myself. I kept them like a museum of the love that used to be. But walking through the rooms I finally see the objects don't remember you, they only know my hand. And the things I thought were ours are just the things I understand. One night I touched the lamp and I remembered who I was before your hand had touched the shade, before the hum and buzz of loving you had settled in the furniture and air. I was a person with the lamp, a person with the chair. The plant was mine, the book was mine, the cup was mine alone. I'd given you a part of them, but they were still my own. I'd lent the objects to the love, but love had gone away, and the object stayed behind to greet another day. I've rearranged the furniture, I've moved the pieces now. The lamp is on the other side, the plant is made of vow to keep on growing in the light that's only from my frame. The cup is filled with water that I drink without a name. I've taken back the things I gave to us, the things I lent. The years of shared possession were a temporary rent, but the house has been evicting ghosts and I have been the lease, the owner of the objects and the keeper of the peace. What is ownership but a feeling in the gut, a sense that things are mine because I've opened up. I opened up to you, I shared my space, my time, my air, but the objects never left me, they were always there. So I'll keep them with the different kind of love now, a new kind, the kind that knows the difference between yours and mine. The things I kept that weren't yours are finally just mine, a reclamation of the space where I have started to shine. The things I kept that weren't yours, they never were yours at all. They were mine before you walked in, mine before the fall. The lamp, the plant, the chipped cup on the shelf, they were mine, they've always been myself. I kept them like a museum of a love that used to be, but walking through the rooms I finally see the objects don't remember you, they only know my hand, and the things I thought were ours are just the things I understand. I turn the lamp on every night, I water the green plant. The cup is in the cupboard where I keep the things I grant to myself and no one else, to the person I have found. The things I kept are mine, and I'm on solid ground. Lamp, plant, mine, still. The quiet of the day is where I live now, without the need to tell the world the story of a love that couldn't bleed. I used to have a story that I'd tell to everyone, the narrative of how we met and how we'd come undone. I'd shape it like a novel with a beginning and an end, the tragedy of lovers who could never quite amend, the cracks between the chapters, the plot holes in the heart. I tell it at the dinner tables, I tell it after dark. I thought that if I got it right, the perfect way to speak, that I would find a closure and the wound would finally peak. But every time I told the tale, I'd resurrect the pain, I'd shape you into someone I could justify again. And I became a lawyer for a case that had been closed, arguing for a love that I had ultimately chose. I stopped explaining you to people, I put the story down. The book is closed, the spine is cracked, I'm leaving this town of narratives and theories of what I could have done. The story of the two of us is finally over and done. I stopped explaining you to people, not because I'm cold, but because the plot was never one I was meant to hold. You were a chapter in a book that I have put away, and I've been writing new ones in the quiet of the day. I tell them how you liked your coffee and the way you'd fold your clothes. I tell them about the small things, the intimacy that grows into a kind of language that only two can speak. And I tell them that I understood the reasons you would leak away from me, the slow dissolve, the evening of the text, the silence on the telephone, the space that had perplexed. I'd make them understand you, I'd make them see your side, as if your leaving was a thing I had to justify. And then one day a friend said, you still defend him, dear. You talk about his reasons like you're trying to make him clear. You're not explaining him, you're explaining why you stayed in a love that had a price you've repeatedly paid. I stopped explaining you to people, I put the story down. The book is closed, the spine is cracked, I'm leaving this town of narratives and theories of what I could have done. The story of the two of us is finally over and done. I stopped explaining you to people, not because I'm cold, but because the plot was never I've been writing new ones in the quiet of the day. I realized the story I was telling was about my worth. I was trying to convince the world you saw my life's true birth. I was trying to make people understand the love I'd had, because their doubt about you made me feel that I was bad. But your leaving wasn't about me and my ability. It was about your separate path, your own fragility. And I don't need to justify why I loved you so. The love was real, the love is done, and I have let it go. The last time I explained you was at a dinner on the coast. Someone asked about the reason that we'd finally lost our host, and I opened up my mouth and nothing came, a hollow sound. The story had evaporated, I was empty, I was unbound. I said I don't remember anymore, I think it's been too long. And the table went so quiet, the silence was a song. The song of letting go at last, of putting down the weight, of carrying a story that had finally sealed its fate. What is a story but a map? We used to know the land, a way to walk through something that we can't quite understand. I mapped you out 1,000 times, I mapped us out in grief, and then I put the map away and folded it relieved. Your story isn't mine to tell, your reasons are my own. You're not a person I can justify, a thing I can't atone. And I have stopped explaining you to anyone at all, because the only story that I know is my own rise and fall. I stopped explaining you to people, I put the story down. The book is closed, the spine is cracked, I'm leaving this town of narratives and theories of what I could have done. The story of the two of us is finally over and done. I stopped explaining you to people, not because I'm cold, but because the plot was never one I was meant to hold. You were a chapter in a book that I have put away, and I've been writing new ones in the quiet of the day. The quiet of the day is where I live now, without the need to tell the world the story of a love that couldn't bleed into the shape I wanted, into the form I make. The story's done, the book is closed, the silence is awake. Story done, quiet, free. Story done, quiet, free. I woke up on a Tuesday, I don't remember the month. The sky was gray, the light was flat, a day without a punch. I went about my morning, the coffee, then the mail, and then I realized the voice inside had started to fail. I tried to call you up, the memory of the way you'd speak, the cadence and the rhythm, the syllables you'd streak across the air between us, the frequency of you. But all I found was static, a silence that was new. I tried to reconstruct the sound, I searched the archive of my head, the way you'd say my name in bed, the things you'd leave unsaid. But every time I reached for it, the sound would fade away. A color in the water, a thing I couldn't stay. The day I forgot the sound of your voice was the day I was free. Not because I stopped loving, because the memory had finally let me go, had finally set me down. A person who no longer had to carry the town of your tone and your timbre, your laughter and your sighs. The sound of you had finally left my quiet eyes, and I stood in the silence, a person I could know. The day I forgot your voice was the day I started to grow. I used to hear you everywhere, In every crowded home, a stranger on the street would have the same vocal thumb. I'd stop and listen, I'd turn around, I'd search for your face, but you were never there. Just air, just empty space. The brain is a persistent organ, it holds the things we love, it replays them like a song, a sweet and echoing dove. But one day the song just stopped, the melody let go, and I was left with silence that I hadn't come to know. I thought I'd feel a panic when the sound began to fade. I thought I'd try to claw it back, I thought I would invade the memories and force the playback, make myself recall. But something in my chest said no, just let it fall. The day I forgot the sound of your voice was the day I was free. Not because I stopped loving, but because the memory had finally let me go, had finally set me down. A person who no longer had to carry the tone of your tone and your timbre, your laughter and your sighs. The sound of you had finally left my quiet eyes, and I stood in the silence, a person I could know. The day I forgot your voice was the day I started to grow. I tried to find a recording, a video, a trace, anything that held the tone, the rhythm, the grace. But everything I found was flat, a shadow of the real, and what I wanted wasn't there. The moment wasn't a seal. The sound of you had never been a thing I could preserve. It was a living thing, a breath, a tension and a curve. And when it left, I let it leave, I didn't hold it tight. The sound of you had been a guest, but now it was a slight. I told a friend I've lost his voice, I can't remember how he sounded in the morning, and he'd speak or when he'd vow. When they looked at me with empathy, they nodded with the care. But I wasn't sad, I wasn't numb, I was just aware that memory is a river that moves and moves along, and holding it is like holding the wave. You get the form but not the song. I'd held the sound for years and years, a stone inside my chest, and now the stone had turned to sand, and I could take a rest. What is a voice but a thing that floats away, a frequency that comes and goes, a bird that's on its way. I heard you for the time we had, I heard you every night, but the voice is not a monument, it was a living light. And now the light is dimmed and moved to other rooms, other ears. I don't resent it, I don't mourn, I've just released the years of carrying the sound of you in every empty room. The day I let the sound go, I released the final plume. The day I forgot the sound of your voice was the day I was free. Not because I stopped loving, but because the memory had finally let me go, had finally set me down. A person who no longer had to carry the tone of your tone and your timbre, your laughter and your sighs. The sound of you had finally left my quiet eyes, and I stood in the silence, a person I could know. The day I forgot your voice was the day I started to grow. I cannot hear you anymore, and that is okay. I have a new voice, a new sound, a new and different day. Your voice will be a memory of a memory you trace, and I will live in the silence, in the peace of my own space. Silence, voice, gone, free. Silence, voice, gone, free. Silence, voice, gone, free. I stood in the center of the room where you once lived. The same four walls, the same floorboards, the same light that would give a shape to your silhouette in the evening and the dawn. But something in the air had changed, a presence had withdrawn. I spoke a word into the space, a simple little thing, just something quiet, something small, the smallest offering. I waited for the echo to return to show me that you stayed. But the walls were silent, the room was just a room I'd made. I waited for the sound to come, the pattern of the sound, the way the room would hold your voice and gently wrap it around. But nothing came, no whisper, no vibration in the air. The room had finally been a room and I was standing there. A room that doesn't echo you, is a room that is my own. A space without the shadow of the love I've overgrown. The walls are just the walls, the floor is just the floor. I don't have to listen anymore for footsteps in the hallway or the humming of a tune. The silence is a gift now, not a thing I have to hear. A room that doesn't echo you is the first room I have had that doesn't hold the memory of a love that made me sad. I used to measure every corner by the place you used to stand, the spot by the window, the edge of the nightstand. I'd walk around the furniture and feel the ghost of you in every single surface, in every single hue. But somewhere in the years, the ghost began to thin. The edges of your presence had been worn away within. And I could stand in any spot and not expect to feel your hand upon my shoulder, the memory of your heel. I placed my palm against the wall where you would lean and waited for the warmth to come, the touch that I had seen. But the wall was cold, the wall was just a wall, a thing of paint and stone. Just a person, finally alone. A room that doesn't echo you is a room that is my own. A space without the shadow of the love I've overgrown. The walls are just the walls, the floor is just the floor. I don't have to listen anymore for footsteps in the hallway or the humming of a tune. The silence is a gift now, not a thing I have to hear. A room that doesn't echo you is the first room I have had that doesn't hold the memory of a love that made me sad. I've counted every day that you existed in this place. I've counted every hour of the shadow on your face. And now I'm counting something else the day since you've been gone. And the number is so large now that I finally moved on. Not from the love, not from the loss, but from the need to hold the echo of a person in a room that had grown cold. I've let the walls be empty, I've let the floor be clear, and I have stood in silence without the sound of fear. I've painted over walls, I've changed the furniture around. I've opened all the windows and I've let the light unbound. I've invited other people into the room to make it new. And every time they come they say it feels so much like you. Not like us, not like the ghost, not like the love we wore, but like the person I have been, the one who lives before. The memory, the loss, the time, the winter and the thaw. The person who can stand alone and not be what she saw. What is a room but a container of the things we choose to keep? And what is the echo but a pattern that we don't want to release? I've released it now, the pattern's gone, the echo is at rest. And I am in the quiet of a place that has Sad, I stand in the center of the room and I can finally breathe. The air is not the memory. The walls do not believe in you or us or anything we used to be at night. The room is just a room and I am just the light. Room, mine, still free.